Hey fam, what's good? I hope that you're all well and keeping safe. Welcome back to another one. So since my analysis will remain the same as we had over the course of last week, I might as well just share something extra with each and every single one of you as well. This is a little something that I am using on my week to week bias when it comes down to the Nasdaq, right? And this is something that you guys can also use on your side as well, right? You don't need to find yourself putting up a graph. If you can just read the raw data, then that's perfectly fine as well. But I will advise you to actually get a graph and work from there. This is simply the data that is coming through from the COT report. And since I am only finding myself trading the Nasdaq and just monitoring the US index as well, the DXY, as they are correlating with one another, this is the data that I am finding myself focusing on. If you are finding yourself having some other pairs that you are also trading, such as USD, GBP, whatever pair you are finding yourself having, right, you can literally just do the exact same thing when it comes down to that pair. Just have some extra sentiment within your actual trading as well, right? So looking at the Nasdaq, which is on top, and then the DXY at the bottom, all I'm basically finding myself doing is also tracking where our huge deep pocket investors are finding themselves buying and selling price, right? So these will basically be the non-commercials that I am finding myself looking at. And as we can look at the Nasdaq, right, over the course of the past 3 weeks, we can see that there is a slight decrease when it comes down to our buyers, right? So the long contracts, we can see they are finding themselves slowly decreasing, right? And with our long contracts decreasing, what we basically just want to see an increase in our shorts as well. And as we can see, there is a slight increase in our shorts as well, right? Now we're not just simply gonna find ourselves looking at this data and be like, okay, cool, from last week, we can see that we are finding ourselves decreasing in price, so we must, when Monday comes, when the market is opening up, we just need to short price, right? No, we don't find ourselves approaching that, right? This is just an extra confluence when it comes down to your trading, right? And as we can see the Nasdaq, we can see that some long contracts has been taken off the table, some shorts has been added to the table. So that simply means that our shorts are trying to find themselves stepping within the market. And as I made mention 2 weeks ago, or last week at least, I am finding myself starting to look for some beautiful short opportunities, right? Look at this over here, the DXY. Now, the DXY over here, we can see that our longs, right, is finding itself decreasing, and our shorts is simply finding ourselves increasing a little bit, right? So with that data conflicting, if we are going to say that they are correlating with one another, right, this simply means that the Nasdaq should go up, because the DXY, we have more shorts finding itself coming through, right? And with the DXY basically going down, we need to see the Nasdaq going up, right? So that is also something you need to take into consideration. The data may not find itself correlating with one another, right? And this simply means that our technical analysis, that is something we need to take into consideration, and just simply find ourselves looking at points of interest to where we can potentially see price having that further shift towards the upside, to where we can potentially find ourselves seeing the shorts coming through, right? I hope that makes sense. So let's step into the Nasdaq and see what is happening on the Nasdaq. All right, so on the Nasdaq, looking at our daily time frame, right, we can see over the course of this week, we didn't really find ourselves having too much, momentum when it comes down to price. I did say that if we are going to find ourselves having a closure below this down close candle over here, this is when we can be like, okay, cool, we can then find ourselves looking for some shorts, right? I will highly advise you to go look at our breakdown over the course of last week as well. All right, so looking at what we have currently for this week, we have a beautiful inside bar. We can see that we did take out buy side liquidity as well. So this is a great indication that we can potentially see that further continuation move back towards the downside. But for me to be like, we are finding ourselves being bearish in market structure, I need to see price have a clear closure below this down close candle we have found ourselves creating right over here, because currently this is serving as an actual area of demand to where we can simply have a pushback towards the downside and have a further continuation move back towards the upside, you know what, at least back into our buy side liquidity as we have right over here, and then potentially from this area have that shift back towards the downside, right? So currently, are we bearish on the Nasdaq? No, we are not. We are still bullish when it comes down to the Nasdaq, right? So once we are finding ourselves having this closure below our sell side liquidity, we won't just take our sell side liquidity, but we will also have a change in market structure as well, and this will simply mean we can then find ourselves looking for some beautiful overall shorts towards the downside back into our sell side liquidity as we have right over here, to potentially find ourselves having a further continuation move back into our volume imbalance, as we know that we do have a gap, and as we do know with previous or historical data, you know what, gaps needs to be filled, right? So that is if we are finding ourselves having that closure below, changing market structure to bearish as we are currently still bullish, right? And as you guys know, our overall target is basically, you know what, this area right over here coming through as a monthly area of you know what, supply we are finding ourselves having, and this area right over here is basically a 4 hourly time frame supply, which I found myself boxing out over the course of this week, right? So there we have an up down close candle, right? And this whole area is finding itself basically serving as an area of supply, right? So if we can look at this area over here as well, right, some equal highs is finding itself coming through, and what I like finding myself doing is if we have some equal highs, I'm always looking for an area of supply above price, right? Either an area of supply or a BOB above price, right? And here we can see we do have an area of supply, so I would advise you to just find yourself boxing out that area right over here, as I have it over there as well, as this is an actual area to where we can look at as an actual point of interest, right? Or let me rather not say advise you to do that, right? Because yeah, I'm not allowed to say that I'm advising you, right? But this is just simply my analysis, and this is what I'm having on my you know what, chart whatsoever. So for this coming week, right, I am still somewhat bullish, right? Basically until we can see our buy side liquidity being taken out, then I would be like, okay, cool. You know what? Now we'll start preparing for some potential shorts coming through, right? So, first of all, plan A, right? Plan A is basically to find myself going short on the Nasdaq, right? But I first need to see the Nasdaq telling me that we are bearish in structure so that I can find myself looking for some beautiful overall shorts, right? If we can see the Nasdaq take out this low right over here, right, the low of Friday, and have a nice bearish engulfing closure, that can potentially lead to, you know what, a further continuation move back towards the downside, right? Basically having that shift towards the downside, having a closure below this little zone right over there, this will simply mean that we can have a potential shift back towards the upside for then a further continuation move back towards the downside, right? But if we are going to find ourselves having a tap back into this area and have somewhat of a rejection candle, this will simply mean that we are having a further continuation move back towards the upside, back into our buy side liquidity, right? So just based off market structure, I'm still expecting price to have some upside momentum, but in overall, I'm still sticking with my bias, right? Wanting to see the Nasdaq finding itself shorting, wanting to see the Nasdaq have somewhat of an actual shift back towards the downside based off our COT report as well, and based off our technical analysis as well, right? So they both need to find themselves going hand in hand with one another before making an actual choice whether we are going to find ourselves shorting price. And at this current moment, we are still bullish in market structure. I want to see a shift in market structure before looking for some beautiful shorts to find itself opening up, right? So in the comment section, fam, Let me know what is your bias for this coming week. Are you finding yourself being like, you know what, I'm still gonna find myself looking for those overall longs towards the upside? Or are you just gonna be like me, waiting for price to have that actual shift back towards the downside to see a, or having that actual change in market structure at least, to see a further continuation move back towards the downside, right? Let me know in the comment section what is your thought processes. I would highly appreciate that, fam. Listen, we can find ourselves doing our analysis, right, our breakdown whatsoever, but at the end of the day, we still need to be reactive when it comes down to price, right? With me basically saying something like, hey, if we are going to take out the buy side liquidity, you know what, this is a zone which I will find myself monitoring to go short. Yes, that is exactly what I'm finding myself. That is exactly what I mean. If I'm saying that we are going to have that shift back towards the downside, having that actual bearish engulfing candle closure whatsoever, I am going to find myself monitoring price and see if price is finding itself having that change in structure on my lower time frame, 4 hourly, 2 hourly, 1 hourly, before looking for some actual shorts finding itself coming through, right? So ultimately, all we can find ourselves doing is create these scenarios and look at points of interest to where we can potentially react from, where price, can potentially have somewhat of a reaction from, right? um, and basically react from those areas. So to each and every single one of you watching my content and basically just listening to what I have to say when it comes down to my breakdowns, right? That is ultimately what I want you to find yourself doing on your side as well, and not just come here and listen to me and be like, okay, you said this, so it has to be like this. No, right? There is a lot that can find itself happening, and keep in mind that this is your journey as well. You have to find yourself at the end of the day being able to do this on your own as well, right? And basically grow from there so that you can independently do it without me, without, I don't know, if you have a mentor whatsoever, without your mentor, without nobody, right? Just you and you alone. All right, so that is it from me, your boy D. I'm gonna see y'all in the next one. I'm out.